Hey guys and girls out there in MIDI Guitar Land, it's Dolly coming at you from Sydney, Australia, and today I want to talk about a new plugin that I've developed for Windows, Mac OS and iOS called Volume Pedal. So Volume Pedal was designed to address a few of the pain points that as a digital guitarist I've experienced when using MIDI expression pedals to try and emulate an analog volume pedal. So to really understand exactly why I built this, I think it's really useful to quickly have a look at some really popular amp sims and to kind of see how they work and what controls they have available to us. But having said that, it's also important to consider the DAW or the host that you're working in, and I'll get to that. But first of all, let's have a look at the amp sims. So here are three really popular amp sims. First one is the Neural Amp Modeler, now known as Gateway. Second is Neural DSP Archetype Nolly X, and the third one is S-Gear. This is S-Gear version 3 I have over here. And so if I just run some signal into the plugins, you can hear this just straight DI guitar. I'm going to turn on Gateway. This is a high gain amp sim. If I use the input trim, pull it all the way down, you can still hear that. If I pull the output trim all the way down, you can still hear it there. And so the point is that those particular controls are not really useful to emulate a volume pedal. Let's have a look at the second amp sim. It's the same situation. We have minus 24 dB of gain here on the input trim, and on the output we have minus 24 dB, and we can hear the signal coming through still. Using the gain control on the front of the amp here doesn't really get me the kind of result that I desire. And using the output will completely zero the output here, which is good depending on what you're trying to do. Perhaps if you're trying to put a kill switch at the end of the amp chamber to keep your reverb and delay trails, effect trails going after. But again, that's not really what I always want to do, and I think it's a little bit finicky. The third amp sim is a slightly different case again, and that's the S-Gear 3. So I'll activate it, and let's have a look at the input trim. So it rolls down to about minus 34, and then it goes to minus infinity. And so you have this huge jump between zero silence and actual signal here. And that's not really how your normal analog volume pedal will work. So you can forget that. And by the same token, the output gain has that big jump again from minus 34 dB to minus infinity. Every single amp simulator that you look at is going to have its own kind of quirks. Here's another really great amp simulator and effects suite called Blue Cat Axiom. This one actually has its own built-in volume pedal style effect. And I really like this one, and it actually has the possibility to give it some different kind of tapers built in. But at the end of the day, I find the MIDI control of it to be a little bit counterintuitive and kind of a little bit cumbersome. So yet another popular amp and effect suite which has a volume pedal style effect available in it is Amplitude 5, and I guess it's probably in the earlier versions too. And if I have a look through the available effects, there is a volume pedal. I've already instantiated one here. And yet it has very, very limited controls. So you might be able to assign your MIDI to that for the sweep. But we've got this control here, which is 0 to 10. It's a little counterintuitive, and we got on and off. And so you might be able to get a result that you want with that, but I don't think that it's particularly clear. So Volume Pedal was designed to be amp simulator agnostic, DAW host agnostic, and the idea is that you should just be able to drop it directly in front of your amp simulator, activate it, feed a signal into it, and then you should be able to allow an audio event and get a beautiful clean sweep on it, which responds to the particular kind of taper that you prefer. You can drag the handles here to adjust the curve performance. Volume Pedal also addresses all the other pain points that I've experienced when trying to achieve a natural volume swell in a DAW/host environment. So the first is being able to actually control the taper. The only DAW that I've really been able to do this with is Ableton Live, and quite frankly, it's a real pain to do it. With volume pedal, you simply grab one of the handles and you start to shape the curve the way you want it to perform. You can also just tap it and it will return to the original state of the factory preset that you've got loaded. Say if I'm in linear and I drag it down there and up here, I can just double click and it will return to its original preset state. The other serious pain point that I've experienced when trying to get a MIDI controller to act like an analog volume pedal in an in-the-box environment is the different kinds of MIDI implementation and host parameter automation in place when trying to get my pedal to control a given parameter. Here in Logic Pro, I've got volume pedal instantiated as an audio effect, and so I'm not able to give that a direct MIDI source. However, I can move the position knob and then I can hit Command L and move my controller, and that will map the controller directly to that parameter. Now if I move my volume pedal, you can see that volume pedal is indicating that it's using host control. And that's a little bit different to the direct MIDI, which we'll cover next. You can actually see a little note here. Direct MIDI maps a learned CC to position. Mapping the same CC to position in your host creates a second control path and may cause conflicting movement. Just be aware of that. You can also adjust the gain range of your pedal here. At the minimum, we've got minus 96 dB all the way up to 0 dB, which is very useful. And at the top, we have kind of like a boost range or a cut range. You can either cut by up to minus 24 dB or increase by up to 12 dB. I personally find that setting at minus 96 dB is really good for me, but I sometimes would set it up to around about 80 also. It just kind of depends on the signal that you're putting in. So if I give the gateway some signal again, I'm now able to get some really, really nice controlled volume swells that really, to me, sound much more like an analog volume pedal. And so I'm sure some of you are saying, well, why not just use like one of the gain modules in Logic or something like that? Here's why. So I've brought in a gain module here, and I'm going to map it to my pedal. Okay, and I'm going to set the range to 0 dB here at the top, at the maximum, and minus 96 at the bottom. So looking kind of similar so far, right? So my control pedal should now, if I give it a signal again, it kind of does the trick, but I don't really have control over the taper of the curve at all, unless I can actually edit the taper of my device itself. And again, it just falls a little bit short. I would say that if you wanted to use a volume control device in a different point in your chain in order to affect like a kill switch with some like trailing delays and reverbs after it or something like this is completely fine. But again, you won't have exactly the fine grain kind of control over it like you'll have if you're using the volume pedal plugin. Let's have a look at another use case. So here I am, I've just started a new project in Logic Pro, and this time I'm going to use a software instrument, and I'm going to choose volume pedal from AU MIDI controlled effects, Vaultnaemsae volume pedal. You can see there's the AUV3 version too, which is available through the App Store. Grab volume pedal, I'm just going to grab mono here, and I'm going to create a track. So in this case, I can use the direct MIDI input. So if I click learn here, my control pedal is transmitting MIDI CC16 and the plugin has automatically grabbed that on its MIDI input port. Keep in mind that MIDI CCs will actually be saved to user presets. So if I bring up that user preset that I had before, it's got CC16 baked into it. If you have multiple controllers and you want to have different configurations with different CCs, you can make that happen via the user presets. You should note that if you're using it as an AU MIDI controlled effect, you need to set a sidechain input. So I'm just going to let it have a line in from my SY1000. And we should be seeing some audio pass through at this stage. Probably should have tuned up first, hey? And now I'm going to give it archetype nollie X, mono to stereo. And if I give it some input, you can see that I've used that slow attack curve there to get like a really long taper up and then a quick rise in the volume when it gets towards the top end of the pedal. Volume pedal isn't only designed to be used at the beginning of your chain, although it is very effective there. You can also put it in a post position, like in this situation here where I've got Alchemy loaded. I'm going to drop volume pedal onto an audio effect. I'm going to assign it again. And now I've got host control over the volume. And if I generate some notes, I can use volume pedal as a post volume control. And in this case, maybe I want to put some reverb after it. And so the effective signal path is that my synth is passing into volume pedal, and then volume pedal is passing into this supermassive delay here. And when I pull the volume pedal back to 0, we get the reverb tail after it. And so I would reiterate that you can kind of do this with the native plugins, but if you really want to have control over the taper of the volume pedal action, volume pedal is your plugin. Beautiful. Okay, so here I am now in Ableton Live 12, just so I can give you a little example of setting up the volume pedal plugin in a different DAW environment. So here's archetype nollie X. I'm going to drag in the volume pedal as a VST3 in front of nollie. I'll just place them side by side for better visual comparison, and I'll get rid of the MIDI tracks that we don't need. On the MIDI track in, I'm going to take MIDI from my EV1WL, which is this control pedal here. I'm going to route that MIDI to track 2. I'm just going to use channel 1. And so if I come over to the plugin now and click Learn, straight away it's learned direct MIDI CC16 on channel 1. And we're good to go there. It's that simple. So if you're interested, you can slide over to my GitHub repository. It's Vaultnaemsae/volume-pedal, and you can download a 14-day free trial for desktop formats. You can also find a link down here to the Apple App Store if you're interested in purchasing the Universal AUV3, and that will cover iOS, iPadOS, and macOS. I hope that gives you a bit of a clearer insight into why I created this volume pedal plugin and what it can do for you as a guitar player or a keyboard player or whatever kind of instrumentalist or producer you are. I've also got another plugin forthcoming called Prism Delay, which I'm pretty excited about. It's a kind of creative interpretation of an 8-band delay somewhat based off the UD Stomp style pedal that Yamaha released in the early 2000s. More on that to come. I'll catch you guys in the next one.